welcome everyone. We have a lot of people, and thank you all for joining the webinar organized by DomainCrawler. We at DomainCrawler provides data to domain registries, registrars to help predict information and renewals, and also other data points where we can help. We also work a lot on the counterfeit industry to help the internet against cyber criminals. But today we're not going to talk about that. Today we're going to talk about identifying new marketing opportunities and also predicting renewal rates. And my name, I will. Yes. There we go. Sorry for that. Now we can see the presentation, I guess. And about us, I will present a bit about myself. I'm the founder of DomainCrawler. We started the embryo to DomainCrawler in 2006. Started collecting data, but within the last 14 years, I built up the domain registrar and hosting company Vikings. And also during the time, I found a few other companies, Winshare, Google Rank Trackers, and also Home Security, doing IT security. So a lot of focus on tech companies, like high-tech companies with B2B focus. And with me today, I also have Danny. And please, Danny, present yourself.
Hi, my name is Danny Aerts. I used to work in the domain business, been for a long time the CEO of the Swedish Internet Foundation, the organization that runs .se and .nu. I stopped working there last year, went on an early retirement, and I'm not so successful in being retired. I do quite a lot of other things, but I've been working quite a lot with registries, registrars, was a board member of Center, the community for the CCTLDs in Europe, and a board member for Eureit.eu. Now I'm helping Rickard with DomainCrawler as an advisor.
Thank you, and thank you for being part of DomainCrawler. Your input is always great. We and everyone else at DomainCrawler really enjoys it. But today, going forward, please, first of all, there's a lot of people here. I'm really happy. I was looking through the list of attendees yesterday, and there's a lot of great people. So please introduce yourself, where you're from, and what company you work for. Interesting to see who is here. Now we have someone typing. See, and there is Richard from Kira in Canada. We have John from Hosterstats. We also have Rick from Afnik. And we have Mike from .ie, Patrick from IE. We have people from all over the world. It's Europe, it's North America. Also, we have .be, .pl, .se. From Globalize. Hi, Felix. Central Lake, Benjamin, nice. And Radix. Yeah, there's a lot of people coming in. It's a lot of interesting people, literally from all over the world. Great to see everyone.
One of the reasons why we started to do these webinars is that when you are at ICANN or Center or the typical meeting points, there's a lot of focus on other things. And actually what we are missing, and that's when Rickard and I discuss, is we are missing some sort of open forum for discussion on things that are a bit more than policies and politics. And it's not restricted to your gated community within the CCTLDs Center or ICANN that is maybe a bit too much focused on specific items like DNS abuse right now.
Exactly.
So our ambition is to have a discussion, to share ideas, and to have a hope that you come with your opinion of things.
Exactly, and that's how we see this webinar going forward. Like we will have me and Danny will have a discussion going through a small presentation. But during that time, please ask questions in the chat. We will either take them up and answer it directly or in the Q&A session afterwards. Of course, the slides and the recordings will be available afterwards. So if anyone wanted, there's available on the DomainCrawler YouTube channel. But then let's jump into it. So why business intelligence for sales and marketing? Talking about DNS abuse, like there's been so many discussions about using data for abuse monitoring. We talked about it in our previous webinar. But the best thing to use data for is not trying to find bad guys. It's trying to find your best customers and how you can work with your customers and your renewal base. Because in the end of the day, you want to increase the sales, you want to grow. If you are a new registry, or if you are one of the older CCTLD registries. And how we see this market and what we're trying to do is that there's been so many things within the business intelligence and trying to categorize data. I just had one example here, the DUNS acronym. It's from Dun & Bradstreet's. Their number that they categorize companies with all around the world. It was they launched it in 1963, and it's 300 million companies in there today. So it's not something that is new. It's something that people have been doing for so many times, but we haven't done this like more organized, in my opinion, on the registry and the registrar side. And why now? Why are we, especially DomainCrawler, doing this now? Like I said, we've been doing this since 2006. And the reason is basically that the information is public, it's available, we can get it. And also getting this DNS web information is it's cheaper. Like you can today crawl so much more and have that much better resolution in the data than you could 5-10 years ago, because there were like as easy as the SSD hard drives were too expensive to store all this data and to be able to work with it. So the storage is cheaper, the crawling works, and that also enables engineering capabilities. There is search engines, there is ways to slice and dice the data that weren't just available 5-10 years ago. And that's why we are doing this now, because there's very cost-efficient solutions to get the data and to be able to present it. So that's the timing. That's how I really see the timing. But going into Danny's area of expertise, I would say.
You want me to take over here?
Yes. Do you see the presentation?
Yes, I see it.
Yeah. Please take over regarding the pricing, rebates, and promo deals. Like how you operate.
One thing I just wanted to highlight, what you said from the beginning is my background, even though I've been working 15 years as a CEO of a registry, is very much in the telecom business and mobile telecom business. And when you look at customer processes and business intelligence in telecoms, it's normally you have business intelligence in the area what you would call customer control. It's typically where you want to keep track of the customers that behave in a way you don't want, where you have misuse, where you have too high usage, where you have abuse, and there you put a lot of effort in finding them and prevent that there will be a problem. But you also have the processes and business intelligence in customer care and customer management and the nice part, the sales part. And when you look at registries, the way I've been looking at it, you see there's very much a focus on business intelligence on two areas in a registry. You could say business intelligence in DNS queries, DNS traffic, and there you have a lot of DNS experts that are really just going deep in DNS traffic. And the other part that's become very interesting for the registries is the abuse monitoring, because there's so much politics regarding to that. But the thing that has been underdeveloped is actually the usage of business intelligence in sales and in looking at things like campaigning and renewals. And one of the reasons maybe is that this domain sector is a weird sector from the outside. You have a registry, and a registry, not all the registries are focused on selling. Selling is not a nice word, or is not an appreciated word in our sector. You have the registries, and quite a lot of registries are not focused on sales. They're not focused on profit, good or bad, but that's the situation we have. And we have registrars, the selling machines, the one that have to do the sale, but they don't have the margins. So you have the registries that have the margins. They earn the money. They're the rich part in the sector. And the registrars, they have to do the sales, and they are not rewarded because the margin is so thin that why would you sell a domain name? You don't earn anything on it. And the effect is that, and then the last thing maybe, a domain name itself doesn't cost anything. So let's say I've been a preacher that you should increase the price of a domain name, because I think it's better for the sector. It improves the quality, and it makes margins possible on the registrar side, and that itself makes it more interesting to use business intelligence, because there's no use of using business intelligence if there's no reward in using it. But going back to renewal rates, when you look at renewal rates, you could say it's fairly common that a registry is somewhere between 80 and 85% for the total amount of domain names. I don't know, Rickard, if you want to show the slide where the different age and the domain names are.
There we go.
So this could be a typical renewal rate for a registry, where you have the renewal rate for the first year about 60%, and then it increases to 80, 85, and even higher. So if you look at domain names, you can say after 1 year you're probably hooked for life. Let's say the important thing for a registry is to survive the first renewal moment. When you go from year 1 to year 2, then already you have a big gain in your renewal rate, and after that, probably this domain name will stay very long. So looking at renewal rates, you can say if you have a domains under management and you have a renewal rate of about 80 to 85%, which is at least typical for the older registries, you have a good benchmark. But what does it mean if your renewal rate would be higher than 85%? I would nearly say that you have a problem, because if you have a too high renewal rate, probably it means you're not growing anymore, because the renewal rate means at that time that you only have old domain names in your portfolio, and your sales is not high enough. And even though the sales lead to lower renewal rates for year 1, you need sales to keep your balance, to keep your domains under management at growth. So the most important thing is actually to don't forget to sell. Don't forget to make sure that you get new fresh blood into your zone, and make sure that you survive the first year. So the important thing is, how can you make sure that when you sell, that the customer will be there after 1 year? And here's typically a situation where the registry puts quite a lot of effort in selling, campaigning, and then they do nothing. And they wait and hope and see 1 year later what the renewal rate was. So it's actually that it's fascinating that normally when you in telecom business, you would sell and then you would track the customer and you look at the usage and you look at who is my best customer, and you would try to do upselling after a couple of months. And all these things we don't do in the domain business. I would be very interesting to hear and see in the chat how many are actually tracking campaigns or tracking the customers you just got in the first year. How many are just waiting for the first year to see at the renewal? So if you go back to the slide where you started, would be interesting to see and to hear what type of service monitoring is in place at registries. How many are looking every month or every week? How many of the new domains have an email service connected to it, or get a homepage that goes live, or has a discussion with the registrars about the expected renewal rate based on the situation of the sales they made the last 6 months? How many registry do rewards if the registry does something in the first year to improve the renewal rate? And that is exactly what I expected, because it's nobody's job to monitor. It's not the registrars, because they think it's a waste of time and a waste of money to do it. And the registry thinks it's not my customer. I'm out of scope. I'm not doing it because it's the registrar's job. Here you see the problem with our registrars model. Because it's nobody's responsibility to see what's happening. The one who has the money doesn't have the possibility to see and have direct contact with the customer, and the one that has direct contact doesn't have the incentive.
Yeah, but I would also like that question, like, is it not the task of the registrar to monitor instead of the registry? Like, it's both. Like, it's literally both, because like both are usually companies that want to survive going forward and not being outdated, and that's why you need to monitor and work with your customers. And you should do that together with the registrars if you're a registry, but also if you are a registrar, like a large registrar, you should work with the registry to find ways to work together to build better internet community.
There's an interesting remark regarding lifetime value. If you look at renewal rates, let's say if you have a renewal rate of 40% or 45%, and you could increase it after year 1 to 65%, you actually have an increase of your lifetime value of a bit more than 50%. So there's a tremendous interest on the registry side to influence the renewal rate in the first moment with this 10 to 15, 20%, and it would be clever from a registry perspective also to share a part of this lifetime value improvement towards the registrars, so you can have an incentive on the registrar side. Now it's the registrars have to work with the rebate, and maybe they get a bonus for the first renewal rate. But I'm not aware of too many incentive schemes where the registry has a longer term incentive based on the lifetime value of the domains that are sold from the registrar.
Yeah. Let's move on to, and yes, like to the upsell opportunity. A domain that doesn't have anything, it's a great upsell opportunity, and that is what I think a lot of the domain registrars and hosters are looking at. Daniel, do you want to continue on this slide?
So my experience is that if you look at expectations of renewal rates, you pretty much can predict depending on the registrar who sells. So if you look at the history of the registrars and you look at the history how they perform with campaigns, you have normally you have a good expectation where the renewal rate will land. So if you track your campaigns and you track the registrars and how much did they sell, you could already calculate an expected renewal rate of that campaign based on who did the sales and what is the history of that registrar. And it would be also interesting to see if you calculate on it is the lifetime value of a domain that comes through registrar A or B different, and should this company be rewarded in a different way also. And in that way you could also say you can put an incentive for the registrar that normally performs at a lower level to say, okay, if you increase renewal rates, you can have a better incentive. But predicting based on the history of registrars is fairly easy to do, and I think it gives you a very good indication already. Then, depending how much information you have on the exact customers, you could based on the customers and the services connected to the customers, or the type of usage of the domain name, you could easily model expected renewal rates also. And the question is, do the registries have the data? That's maybe a question for the people in the chat.
Yeah, but some data is available, but then to predict, you need usually more data. DNS, web, link, data connected to it, and also monitoring, because I saw someone like that on a daily basis, because you need to trust the domain name on a daily basis. You know what's going on, not on a quarterly basis, not on a monthly basis. It's weekly, in my opinion.
There was in the chat was a question, was a remark on renewal rates and type of TLD, CCTLD, GTLD. Yes, of course, you have different renewal rates based on the type of, let's say that maybe a CCTLD would have a higher renewal rate and a typical GTLD. Then again, it's and that's why it's not all about renewal rates. It's also about how much do you spend on a campaign, and at what level renewal rate you make a profit or you lose money, and typically one campaign I can remember was normally you say it's not the wisest thing to do as a registry to give domains for free, because you have a spike in your sales, and then you have a extremely low renewal rate, and it goes up and it goes down. But I can remember that we a campaign where we gave IDN domains for free, and it gave, of course, a boost in the IDN's domain. It gave also a fairly low renewal rate, but these domains thereafter had a renewal rate that was nearly 100% for 10 years. So that was I think the most important, most successful campaign overall. And it's all about tracking how long you keep the domain names. So you can have a heavy discount and you can have a low renewal rate, but you can have an extremely positive lifetime value.
Because this domain names you would never have got
yes,
anyway.
It was a way of making sure that people knew that you have IDNs, and also to have a building up a relationship with registrars of selling IDNs thereafter.
Yep. Yeah.
I measured a strong relationship between age, service usage, and renewal, I believe.
Yeah, we will come back to that later. Later here. I will then jump ahead a bit. Talking about that relationship, like the most important indicators that we see, and I'll also come back to like a small scoring system that we have built, is content and registration. Like what the content on the website, on the domain name, how the domain name is used. Is it an e-commerce? Is there anything else connected to it? Is there an email address connected to it? And also similar registrations. So if, let's say, the customer have a portfolio of domain names, then there's like super important indicators. But coming back to that a little bit later. And if we talk about the marketing side of this, how we can stimulate growth and identify opportunities, like what I was saying before, that you need to have upsell opportunities that's driven like any other e-commerce. When something is happening on a domain name, then something else should be pushed. Not that it should just be static, the same kind of promotions to everyone, the same kind of data, the same kind of things going out to every domain owner if you are a registrar. And this is something I would say the registries need to work on with registrars. Also, if there's a neighboring match, like the Internetstiftelsen in Sweden, that is both the registry for .se and .nu, that could see, okay, is this the owner of this domain name, does it have both the .se and .nu, as .nu is very strong in Sweden, to have that kind of relationship? Because if you have both domain names, you have done a defensive registration, probably because you're very well aware of domain names and want to keep your domain names. Same thing with .ch, .at for .de, and the other way around for that region. And this goes to any other countries neighboring, either because of language, either because of similar history and everything. And also, is there an IDN available? How can that be pushed into the domain owners? And then it talked a lot about like focus on month number 6 to 11 of the first renewal period, because that's where you have the churn. That's when someone decides if they want to keep the domain name or not. And then if you want to add anything on that time period.
No, of course, it's a bit depending on if the renewal period is 1 year or if you have a longer period. But it's just before you have to decide if you want to renew or not. Of course, you can have an 18-month. You have registries that have 2 years. Yeah. It's upcoming renewal moment. I think that it's important also.
Yeah, absolutely. And what we have done, and this is, I think, we have had some questions beforehand when registering for the webinar. But looking at indicators for to be able to scoring and predict renewals, because we are working with domain registrars that are public listed, domain registrars that want to know, they have boards, they have anyone that, okay, how does our business look a year, 2 years ahead? Can you please tell us the domain names I'm registering today? What's the renewal rate going forward? So what we have done is indicators connecting to a domain name, talking about what the domain name was used for, and like we have like DNS server, A record, and MX record. We don't look at, because there's no pointing, because they, like, if you have a mail server connected to it, then you will have a DNS server. What we look at and what is a high value is if there's a premium email provider like Office 365, Google Suite, or similar, something that indicates that the person are using email and are willing to pay for it. Of course, parking page, like if there is a parking page after 9-10 months, the renewal rate is going down. Therefore, there's a negative number on that. If there's an active website, but also if there's an e-commerce provider connected to it, let's say Shopify, let's say there's a WooCommerce site on it, then that's rewarded. We also look at Google Tag Managers and Google Analytics and similar. Because if someone is like actively looking how many visitors they have on the website, then that is an indicator that person want to keep this domain name. Also, if there's an SPF record and SPF record containing like MailChimp, SendGrid, and similar, because if someone have connected that kind of service to a domain name, they intend to use it to send out something to their customers. Let's say you are a restaurant and you send out offers to your regulars. We also look at SSL certs, what kind of SSL certificates. If it's a Let's Encrypt one, then we only do 5 points. If it's a regular one, 10 points. If it's an EV cert, then you get because they're so expensive or high cost, depends how you see it. We do like 30 points just for that. And also, if someone use ads.txt to be able to show what ads can be shown where, connecting to that standard. Looking at then also using the scoring, like if it's from like minus something to 10, like up to 40% renewal rate. If it's 11 to 20, we see that there's a renewal rate of around 65%, aka an average renewal. If there's 20 to 30%, 85%, and then 30 above, that's where you have the real users and the real users of the domain, the SMEs, someone that want to keep the domain name for a very, very long time. So this is how it is. And please give comments if you.
There's a comment in the chat.
There's no sales category different from parking. Like sales category, like if you want to sell the domain name, yeah. If there is, like, I think that is the question. If someone trying to sell the domain name, and in my opinion, that's the same thing as parking. It goes under the same, not positive signal. We haven't actually looked at redirections. The active website, I think, calculates the redirections to see that, okay, there is something going on here. Because like if you do it like a defensive domain registration, then you are usually redirecting it to your main site. And therefore, it is a good thing, but you usually don't have email or anything connected to the domain name because you have that on your main site, main domain. Are the points for specific variables determined by the machine learning model? Yes. Or yes, to easily, that's the easy answer to that question. Active website is not, we don't base it on the DNS traffic. We base it on if there's something HTML responding that's not a parking page. That, like, it is a real site. We also look at the backlinks to the site. We also look at referring domain names. We got one question here that we got from the registration to the webinar. Do you already work with prediction models in your daily business? And is it just a planning model for you, or do you actively use predicted figures to find ways to positively influence it, and how? And Dana, do you want to add something to this one?
As I have to guess now, I'm taking the head as a registry, based at least on the experience I have until last year. I would say at very few registries have prediction models on a daily basis. I would even guess that most of them don't even have it on a monthly basis. And it's interesting. I had this example of if you are a registry that have 1 million domain names under management, and you would have a renewal rate of 85%. That means that you would need roughly between 250 and 300,000 new domain names every year just to keep it on 1 million of under management domain names. That means that 25 to 30% of your customer base, of your domain base, is insecure. And that would mean that it should be of interest to try to find a way to see what's happening with your 25% or 30% insecure domain names. So I think you should spend more time on trying to predict what's happening. I doubt that registries do it. And yes, if you track domain names and the behavior and the service connected to domain names, I think with a good discussion and incentive program with registrars, you can positively influence it quite a lot.
Yeah.
So if the registrars become more involved and also get some sort of reward, then it makes sense to spend some time on increasing the renewal rate.
Yeah. We also have another question from the .il registry. At ISOC, we have difficult to measure or predict our renewal rate, since recently we decided to approve renewals not only close to the expiry date, but also at any point after registration for like 1 to 5 years. What makes the regular renewal rate a bit distorted comparing to other rates? New domains deleted, expires. Which parameters variables should we consider in order to calculate our renewal rate more accurately?
So in this case, probably the two aspects you want to keep track on. The one is the renewal moment, and that if that is 1 year, then you look at the renewal for 1 year. But if you have sold domain names for a longer period of time, then it's still interesting to look at renewal rate at the first renewal moment. But then again, I think in general, I would take a timestamp. I would take renewal after 1 year, after 2 years, and then you calculate the ones that are still in their first expiry moment or renewal moment. But the longer a customer is willing to buy the domain name, it has a positive effect on the, at least, and the lifetime value and the profitability, even if the renewal rate is lower after 3 or 4 or 5 years. So yes. I would take both. I would take the first renewal moment, and I would still take some sort of time aspect, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year.
Yeah, thank you. We also have another question here. It would make sense to some more comment. Like it would make sense to take into account if the domain was registered in a discount campaign, price of credit, as another parameter.
Yes, of course. Let's say you have on top of the things that Rickard mentioned, you should add, let's say, both the information on the campaign and the rebates that were used, I would even in a model, I would use it for business intelligence to see how much money you've spent on a campaign or the cost of acquisition of the domain name. So you could let's say it's not only about trying to calculate the renewal rate. It in the end is also, it has to do with calculating the profitability of a campaign or the profitability of the customer or the lifetime value of a domain name. So it's on top of, I think, what Rickard has shown you, you have to build other parts to have a more complete business intelligence towards the domain names.
Yeah. I will then jump ahead here. Thank you. And coming back a little bit to something I really want to address here is like, I call it the hunt for resellers, and also looking at both resellers in terms of like sub-registrars, but also registrars. We've talked about it, and there's like, and Dana said it before, like there's not only one registrar. They have different business models. They do drop catching. They do like super low margin. They have APIs where you can register like millions of domain name in one go. And if I would be someone that owns a huge registry or a large registrar, I would focus, okay, what kind of registrar or sub resellers can I get in that actually have a high renewal rate? And that's what you should be focusing on. High renewal rates, higher rebates, and not giving the same kind of rebates to everyone, because then you're not building different tiers in different baskets where you put your resellers and, in the end of the day, your customers. Because different customers attracts to different resellers.
There's an interesting remark on profiling registrars. Yes, I think it would be wise. Let's say the classical way is to have some sort of profiling of registrars depending on their sales.
Yeah.
Large registrars, small registrars, the top 5 that give you the most domain names. But yes, I think you have to go deeper and look at not only what they sell, but also what the renewal rate is and what their business models are, and understand a bit better how they act, how they think, what makes them tick.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And even there, I would say you should maybe consider to have different types of incentives for different types of registrars.
Yeah. No, but exactly. And like I would just continue to like, what's the takeouts that we want to take, like everyone take from this is like, this is an e-commerce. Like Dana was stating that it's a very strange industry, and it is. It's a $1 billion e-commerce, if not multi-billion-dollar e-commerce around the world, but it's not behaving like one. It's behaving like taking customers for granted, taking resellers for granted. And if I would run a registry today in 2022, I would hire an e-commerce manager, go to a large e-commerce and find an e-commerce manager to be able to work with the data, work with the customers, and understand what the different customers, resellers, registrars, everyone in this, everyone within the domain name partnership, because it's not only one, it's not only two, it's like could be 5 different levels from the customer to the registry with sub resellers and so on. And also like work with the information. There is so much information, like Dana said, like internally, but also work with external information and set goals and tests. And this comes back to the e-commerce. This is usually what an e-commerce, a CRO manager is working with. On a website, on an e-commerce, they do it, but not on a multi-million-dollar, multi-billion-dollar industry like this. There's very few that does it. And yeah,
Rickard, there was a question here. Registrars tend to be very protective of their resellers and generally don't want to disclose details. We had a bit of discussion, Rickard and I, because if I would be a registry, I would ask Rickard to peep behind the scenes and see if you can see the resellers behind the registrars based on the data so my, if they are very protective, I think there are ways to get information anyhow. But that's my personal opinion.
No, but I totally agree. Like DNS, you also have, like we did a check of, like we took some domain authorities TLD, then we looked at, okay, like we were trying to find who is the upstream provider for different TLDs for that web hosting company, and it was 99.1% of all domain names were on a few different registrars but just using the string like DomainCrawler and then removing .com, just taking that all CC TLDs and then just group it by registrar. It was a very easy job, and it was very easy to find it. So yes, they might be very protective about it, but it's easy to find.
So it's not our intention to have a less fruitful discussion between registrars and registries by saying that you can find the information even if the registrar is protective. But so I'll refrain from saying that.
Here it's curious what other registries' experience have been with the resellers. Do your okay, so it's, I guess this also ties back to like registrar agreements. You have access to the resellers, but again, you can find data, you can work on this, and you can understand on renewal rates, group that by DNS server, by MX record, by a record, and so on and so forth.
The question, the remark regarding that the problem of the registry is that they are not allowed or can have direct contact with the registrants. Yes, that's what I mentioned in the beginning, and that's the problem in our sector. But it doesn't mean that you don't have to be blind. You could at least have business intelligence to have a discussion with the registrars and ask them or give them some sort of a incentive to start working on contacting registrants. So if you would see after 4 months that a domain is starting to be used as a homepage, has a high score, should be a good opportunity for upselling. Right now we have routines in place where the registry gives the registrar information about DNS abuse. In the same way, you could give the registrar information about possibilities for upselling.
Because again, it is a partnership, and you need to interact together. Like when I started the domain industry 20 years ago, there were no interaction at all between registries and registrars. Like now, there's actually conferences people go to together to meet, and that is driving the industry because it's a supplier, like a provider and a customer, and a partnership. I think like we had a plan of doing 45 minutes. We have done 50 minutes now with this webinar. Is there any other questions that we want to highlight, or we have one here from Clifford. Are the points for specific variables determined by a machine learning model? Yes. That quick answer is yes to that. We do look at, okay, what points, like a point scoring system to predict renewals.
So the intention of the ambition of this seminar was maybe the feeling that there's so much discussion about DNS abuse and DNS abuse monitoring that sometimes you get the feeling that it's only on the customer control side they're using business intelligence, and maybe we forget the easy part that business intelligence to improve sales and to improve renewal rates is at least as important, so that not the DNS experts or the DNS abuse expert eat all the money that is available for business intelligence. So that is was a simple message that you shouldn't forget that in the end you need sales, and you need to find customers, and you have to keep them also.
It's two different budgets. Just because it's a BI or something around BI, that it should also only go to the security side on the abuse monitoring. And yeah, we got we have one last question here. Would it be a good thing to profile classified registrars?
I think I answered that already.
Yeah. Yes. Because, and just do it by looking at the renewal. Like, if I would need to start with someone, I would look at the renewal rate per registrar. Yearly renewal date for the last 5 years. Super easy, super spot on in terms of what data you want to get out and who is your best registrars for long term. But thank you all. Thank you, Johnny, for this great webinar. I really enjoyed it. Like, we have had so many great comments, questions, and we're more than happy to answer more questions. Just connect with us on LinkedIn, connect with us on other channels, and we are more than happy to help to see, like, this is an evolving industry, and that's why I think it's so interesting. So thank you all. Thank you, Danny, for the webinar, and thank you all for listening in, and thank you very much.